The day silence watched her bleed. The town of Red Hollow had learned the art of looking away. Wooden buildings stood shoulder to shoulder like gossiping old men, their porches creaking under the weight of secrets. Dust rolled through the main street in lazy spirals, settling on boots, hems, and consciences alike. In Red Hollow, injustice didn't arrive loudly, it stayed quietly, fed by fear and comfort. That was how Clara May Whitfield ended up on her knees in the dirt. Her dress, once pale blue, stitched by her own hands, was torn at the shoulder. Dried blood marked her cheek, and fresh tears cut clean lines through the dust caked on her face. One sleeve hung loose, buttons ripped away like they never mattered. She was shaking, but not begging. That was the part that bothered them. "Stand up when you're spoken to," Sheriff Ildon Briggs said, his voice thick with authority and something uglier beneath it. Clara tried. Her legs betrayed her. She collapsed again, palms scraping the ground, breath hitching as pain tore through her ribs. A murmur rippled through the crowd gathered outside the sheriff's office, men in hats, women clutching shawls, children peeking from behind skirts. No one moved. Briggs sighed like this was an inconvenience. "I warned you, Clara. You should have known better than to accuse a man like Harlan Crow." Harlan stood off to the side, arms folded, a slow smile stretching beneath his mustache. He hadn't been touched, not a hair out of place. Money and power had that effect, it kept dirt from sticking. "She's lying," someone muttered. "She always was trouble. Best teach her a lesson." Clara lifted her head then, eyes searching the faces around her. She recognized them all. The baker who used to slip her extra bread. The woman who once borrowed sugar and cried in her kitchen about a cruel husband. The preacher who spoke of mercy every Sunday. Their eyes slid away. Silence closed in like a coffin. Briggs took a step forward. "For false accusations and disorderly conduct, you'll spend the night in the holding cell. Maybe that'll remind you of your place." He reached for her arm. That was when the sound cut through the square. Hoofbeats. Slow, measured, unhurried. Everyone turned. A lone rider approached from the edge of town, dust rising behind his horse like a warning. He wore a dark hat pulled low, a weathered coat, and a gun belt that had seen real use, not decoration. His horse was tall and steady, the kind that didn't spook easy. He reined in a few feet from the crowd. For a moment, he just sat there, eyes scanning the scene, the kneeling woman, the smug man, the sheriff's hand gripping power like a weapon. Then he swung down. Boots hit the dirt with finality. "Let her go." The voice was calm, not loud, not angry. That made it dangerous. Briggs turned, irritated. "This is town business. Move along." The stranger stepped closer to Clara and knelt beside her, ignoring the sheriff entirely. He didn't touch her at first. Just met her eyes. She flinched. Softly, he said, "You hurt." Her lips trembled. Yes. That single word carried more truth than all the lies circling the square. The man stood and finally faced the sheriff. His eyes were steel gray, unreadable. "She's with me." The words fell like a stone into still water. Briggs laughed. "I don't recall her belonging to anyone." The cowboy's jaw tightened. Not at the insult to him, but at the insult to her. "She doesn't belong to anyone," he said evenly. "That's the point." A hush spread. Even the wind seemed to pause. Harlan Crow stepped forward. "You don't know what you're getting into, stranger." The cowboy turned his gaze on Harlan. Just one look, and Harlan's smile faltered. "Name's Caleb Kane," the cowboy said. "And I know exactly what I'm looking at." He gestured to Clara, a woman beaten for telling the truth. Gasps rippled. Briggs bristled. "You accusing this town of something?" Caleb didn't raise his voice. "I'm accusing you." The crowd shifted uneasily. Caleb reached into his coat slowly. Hands tensed. Guns half drawn. He pulled out a folded paper and held it up. "Federal Land Dispute Notice. I'm here on business that outranks your badge." Briggs hesitated. Just a breath, but enough. Caleb took another step forward, placing himself fully between Clara and every man who'd failed her. "She's coming with me," he said. Now, Clara looked up at him, disbelief mixing with fear. "I don't even know you." Caleb glanced down, his voice soft again. "You don't have to." He extended his hand. The town watched. Silence watched. And for the first time that day, Clara May Whitfield chose something different. She took it. The ride away from Red Hollow. The moment Clara May Whitfield climbed onto the horse behind Caleb Kane, Red Hollow turned its back on her. No words followed her. No apologies. Just the creak of porch boards and the dry whisper of dust as the horse began to move. She didn't look back. Not because she was brave, but because she knew if she did, she'd shatter. Caleb rode steady, one hand on the reins, the other resting near his gun, not threatening, just prepared. He hadn't asked her questions yet. He hadn't demanded explanations. That, somehow, hurt more than if he had. They rode past the last building, the last watching eyes, and into the open stretch where the land rolled wide and empty. Only then did Clara's breath finally break. A sob escaped her chest, raw and uncontained. Caleb slowed the horse. "You can cry," he said quietly. "Ain't nobody here to count your tears." She pressed her forehead into his back, fingers clutching the worn fabric of his coat like it was the only solid thing left in the world. "I didn't lie," she whispered. "I swear to God, I didn't." "I know," Caleb said. The certainty in his voice startled her. "How?" she asked. "Because men who tell the truth don't flinch the way he did when I looked at him." She nodded, though he couldn't see it. They rode for another mile before Caleb guided the horse toward a line of cottonwoods near a shallow creek. He dismounted first, then offered his hand again, gentler this time, like he'd learned something about her weight already. When her feet touched the ground, her knees buckled. Caleb caught her before she fell. For a second, she stiffened, muscle memory screaming danger. He froze instantly. "I won't hold you if you don't want me to," he said. Her breath shook. Slowly, she nodded. "Just don't let go yet." He didn't. They stood there while the creek murmured and the sun dipped lower, painting the world in gold and shadow. Finally, Clara stepped back on her own. "Why did you help me?" she asked. Caleb took off his hat, running a hand through dark, wind-tossed hair. His face looked older up close, lined by years that hadn't been kind. "Because once," he said, "no one helped someone I loved." Her chest tightened. "Your wife." A pause. "My sister." Clara swallowed. "She accused the wrong man?" she asked carefully. "No," Caleb said. "She accused the right one. Town chose him anyway." The air grew heavy. "What happened to her?" Clara whispered. Caleb's jaw flexed. "She didn't survive long enough to see justice." The words landed like a gunshot. "I'm sorry," Clara said. Caleb nodded once. "That's why I don't ride past things anymore." He moved to the saddlebags, pulling out water and a small bundle of food. He handed them to her like it was nothing, like kindness was ordinary. She stared at him. "They're going to come after you." "I know. They don't like men who interfere." "I like that even less." She managed a weak, broken smile. As she drank, the shaking finally eased enough for her to think, and thinking brought memories she'd tried to bury. Harlan Crow, his breath heavy with liquor. His voice low and certain because no one ever told him no. The way the room had felt smaller when he locked the door. Her hands started to tremble again. Caleb noticed immediately. "You don't have to tell me now," he said. "Or ever." "But I want to," she said, surprising herself. "Because if I don't, it feels like they win." He met her gaze. "I'm listening." Her voice wavered, but she spoke. "He said no one would believe me," she began. "That I should be grateful he noticed me at all. When I fought back," he laughed. Caleb's hands curled into fists so tight his knuckles went white, but he didn't interrupt. "When I went to the sheriff," she continued, tears streaming freely now, "they asked what I was wearing. Asked why I'd been alone. Like that mattered more than what he did. Caleb exhaled slowly, like he was forcing anger into control. They hurt you again, he said. She nodded. And they would have kept hurting me, if you hadn't come. Silence stretched between them. Then Caleb said, "You're not going back there. I have nowhere else." He looked toward the horizon, where the land opened into unknown distance. "I've got a place," he said. "It ain't much, but it's safe." "Safe for how long?" she asked. "As long as I'm breathing." That promise settled into her bones. As the sun slipped fully behind the hills, Clara realized something terrifying and strange. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't afraid of the night. The man Red Hollow never forgot. Caleb Kane's place sat where the land forgot itself. No town, no church bells, no gossip drifting through open windows. Just a weathered cabin tucked against a low ridge, half hidden by scrub oak and tall grass that whispered when the wind passed through. The kind of place a man chose when he wanted the world to leave him alone, or when he couldn't afford to be found. Clara watched as Caleb pushed the door open. "Careful," he said, "steps loose." Inside, the cabin smelled of leather, coffee grounds, and old pine. Simple, clean, a single bed, a rough table, a cast iron stove. One extra chair pulled out like it had been waiting for her. "You live here alone?" she asked. "Mostly." That word caught her attention. Caleb set down the saddlebags. "Sit. I'll start a fire." She eased herself onto the chair, every movement reminding her of the bruises hidden beneath her dress. As the fire crackled to life, warmth filled the room, and with it, a silence that felt different from Red Hollow's. This one didn't judge. Caleb handed her a blanket. She hesitated only a moment before wrapping it around herself. "Thank you," she said. He nodded. "You hungry?" "A little." He smiled faintly. "That's progress." As he worked, Clara studied him in the firelight. The lines on his face weren't from age alone, they were from choices. From standing where others stepped back. "Why did the sheriff hesitate when you showed that paper?" she asked. Caleb didn't look up. "Because it reminded him who I used to be." Her breath caught. "You're from Red Hollow. Born here." The words landed heavy. "You left," she said. "After my sister died," he replied. The kettle whistled. Caleb poured water over grounds, the sound filling the space like a pause. "They said her name was Mary Kane," Clara said slowly. "I've heard it." Not kindly. Caleb's hand stilled. "They call her a liar," Clara continued. "Say she ruined a good man's life before she ran off." Caleb turned then. His eyes weren't angry. They were tired. "She didn't run," he said. "She was run out." Clara swallowed. "The man she accused was Harlan Crow's father," Caleb went on. "Same blood, same smile, same belief that the world owed him silence." Clara's chest tightened painfully. "I was younger," Caleb said. "Thought truth was enough. Thought if I spoke loud enough, they'd listen." He shook his head. "They didn't." "What happened?" Clara asked. "They burned our house down," he said simply. "Said it was an accident." Her hand flew to her mouth. "And Mary?" Caleb stared into the fire. "She never recovered. Died a year later." "I'm so sorry," Clara whispered. "So was the town," Caleb said. "Just not enough to change." He handed her a cup of coffee. Their fingers brushed. She flinched, then forced herself not to. Caleb noticed. He always noticed. "I won't touch you unless you ask," he said. "And I won't leave unless you tell me to." Tears welled in her eyes again, but these were different. "They're going to come," she said. "Harlan won't let this go." "No," Caleb agreed. "He won't." "So what do we do?" Caleb reached into a trunk near the bed and pulled out a worn leather folder. Inside were papers, old, yellowed, carefully kept. "Proof," he said. "Statements, names, records that never made it into a courtroom." Clara stared. "You've been collecting this for years. You plan to come back." "Not like this," he admitted. "But the land dispute brought me close enough." She looked up at him. "You were waiting for the right moment." "I was waiting for the right reason." Their eyes met. Outside, Thunder rolled in the distance. That night, Clara slept on the bed while Caleb took the chair near the door. She woke once, shaking from a nightmare. Without a word, Caleb stood and sat on the floor beside the bed, close enough to be felt, far enough to be safe. "I'm here," he murmured. She believed him. At dawn, dust rose on the horizon. Riders. 3 of them. Caleb was on his feet instantly, gun in hand, eyes sharp. "They found us," Clara whispered. Caleb glanced back at her, calm as stone. "No," he said. "They followed you." He stepped outside, and Red Hollow's past came riding straight toward them. When the town came for blood, the riders didn't slow as they approached. 3 men, hard faces, Sheriff Eldon Briggs at the center, his badge catching the early light. On his right rode Harlan Crow, jaw tight, eyes burning with something close to panic. On the left, a deputy Clara recognized, the same one who'd looked away while she cried. Caleb stood in front of the cabin, feet planted, gun low but ready. Clara watched from the doorway, heart hammering. "You shouldn't be here," Briggs called out, reining in a few yards away. "This woman is wanted." Caleb's voice carried calm across the open land. "For what?" "Kidnapping," Briggs said without hesitation. "An obstruction of justice." Clara gasped. "That's a lie," Harlan sneered. "You ran because you're guilty." Caleb didn't look at him. "Funny," he said to Briggs, "how justice only moves fast when it protects men like him." Briggs' eyes flicked to the cabin, then back. "You always did have a problem with authority, Kane. And you always had a problem with truth," Caleb replied. The deputy shifted uneasily. "Sheriff, maybe we should." "Enough," Briggs snapped. He turned back to Caleb. "Hand her over. Now." Caleb took one step forward. "She's not going anywhere." The air went tight. Guns hovered half-drawn. One wrong breath could turn the morning red. Harlan leaned forward in his saddle. "You think you're some kind of hero? She's already ruined enough lives." Caleb finally looked at him. "You mean yours?" Harlan's hand twitched toward his holster. The shot rang out before Clara could scream. Dust exploded near Caleb's boots. He moved fast, too fast. His gun came up, not to kill, but to warn. He fired once, clean and sharp, striking the ground inches from Harlan's horse. The animal reared, screaming, throwing Harlan hard into the dirt. "Enough," Caleb roared. The deputy froze. Briggs' face drained of color. "You just made this worse." "No," Caleb said coldly. "I just stopped you." Harlan scrambled to his feet, rage twisted and wild. "I'll hang you for this." "You won't," Caleb said. "Because you're coming with us." "To where?" Briggs demanded. "To a courtroom that isn't owned by you." Caleb reached into his coat and held up the leather folder. "I have affidavits," he said. "Land records. Witness statements you buried when my sister spoke. Federal judges don't like that." Briggs' jaw worked. Sweat beaded at his temple. "This doesn't end well for you," he said quietly. Caleb stepped aside, revealing Clara fully. "She's not alone anymore," he said. "And neither are you, Sheriff." For a moment, no one moved. Then the deputy did something unexpected. He dismounted. "I saw him," the deputy said, voice shaking. "What he did to her. I just didn't think it'd matter." Harlan stared at him in disbelief. "You spineless." "That's enough," Briggs snapped, but the damage was done. Caleb nodded once. "Truth's contagious." Briggs looked around. 3 men suddenly felt like one. "You'll regret this," the sheriff said, turning his horse away. Harlan followed, hatred etched deep into his face. As the riders disappeared, Clara's legs finally gave out. Caleb caught her. "They'll come back," she whispered. "Yes," he said, "but not like before." Inside the cabin, Caleb packed quickly. "We're leaving," he said. "Tonight." "Running?" she asked. "No," he said firmly. "Positioning." That night, as thunder rolled and rain lashed the land, Clara sat close to the fire, watching Caleb clean his gun with practiced care. "Why do you keep doing this?" she asked softly. Fighting battles that cost you everything. He looked at her then, really looked. Because if I stop, he said, then men like him win forever. Rain hammered the roof. Clara reached out, hesitated, then placed her hand over his. For the first time, he didn't pull away. Where wounds begin to heal. They rode through the night. Rain soaked the land and turned the dirt roads into rivers of mud, but Caleb never slowed. Clara held on, not out of fear this time, but because his steady presence anchored her against memories that still tried to drag her under. By dawn, they reached an abandoned homestead tucked into a narrow valley. A broken fence leaned like it was tired of standing. The house itself was small but solid, built by hands that once believed in tomorrow. Caleb dismounted. "We'll rest here." Clara nodded, exhaustion etched deep into her bones. Inside, the air smelled of dust and old wood, but the walls were thick, the windows small, safe. Caleb built a fire while Clara sat wrapped in her blanket, watching the flames dance. "You don't sleep much," she said quietly. "Sleeps loud," he replied. "Too many voices." She understood. Later, as the fire burned low, Clara's strength finally gave way. She woke to find herself lying on a narrow bed, her boots removed, her dress folded neatly on a chair. Panic flared. Then she saw Caleb sitting on the floor by the door, back against the wall, eyes closed but alert. "You're safe," he said without opening them. Her breath slowed. "Thank you," she whispered. Days passed like that. Caleb hunted. Clara cooked when she could. When pain gripped her ribs, he handed her medicine without comment. When nightmares stole her breath, he sat nearby until she returned. He never rushed her, never asked for more. One evening, Clara stood outside watching the sunset bleed gold into purple. Caleb joined her, handing over a tin cup of coffee. "I don't know how to be normal anymore," she said suddenly. He considered that. "Normal's overrated." She laughed, softly, surprised at the sound of it. "Do you ever think about staying?" she asked. Caleb looked toward the hills. "I think about building something that doesn't burn." Her chest warmed. That night, she told him more, not the details, but the fear that lingered after. "I feel broken," she admitted. "Like something I can't fix was taken from me." Caleb's voice was low and steady. "Nothing was taken that can't be reclaimed." She met his eyes. "How do you know?" "Because you're still here," he said. "Still choosing." The words settled into her like a promise. Without thinking, Clara reached for his hand. This time, he held it. Not tightly, not possessively, just enough to say, "I'm not going anywhere." Outside, the wind moved gently through the valley, carrying something unfamiliar. Peace. The day Red Hollow was forced to listen. The courthouse in Dry Creek wasn't grand, but it wasn't owned either. That alone made it dangerous. Clara's hands trembled as she stepped inside, sunlight slicing through tall windows and landing like a spotlight on the center of the room. Every footstep echoed, too loud, too final. Caleb walked beside her, not ahead, not behind, with her. Harlan Crow sat at the defense table, freshly shaved, clean suit, confidence stitched into every movement. Sheriff Briggs occupied a bench near the wall, jaw tight, eyes darting. The judge entered. "All rise." Clara rose on legs that remembered pain. The trial moved fast, faster than Red Hollow ever allowed truth to move. Witnesses spoke. Some faltered. Some found courage in the sound of their own voices. Then the deputy took the stand. "I saw him follow her into the storage room," he said, eyes fixed on the floor. "I heard her tell him no." Murmurs rippled. Harlan's lawyer objected. Overruled. Clara's breath came shallow. Then Caleb stood. "For the record," he said, voice steady, "I submit evidence withheld by Sheriff Eldon Briggs in a prior case." He handed over the leather folder. The judge leafed through it slowly. The room changed. "This includes sworn statements related to Mary Kane," the judge said. Clara felt Caleb stiffen. Harlan's face drained of color. The judge looked up sharply. "Sheriff, care to explain why this never reached a court?" Briggs didn't answer. Silence stretched, thick and damning. Finally, Clara was called. Her knees shook as she took the stand. She looked at the jury, at the judge, then, once, at Harlan. He didn't smile this time. She told the truth. All of it. When she finished, the courtroom was so quiet it felt like the world had paused to listen at last. The verdict came quickly. Guilty. Harlan collapsed into his chair, face hollow. Sheriff Briggs was arrested before the day ended. Outside, sunlight hit Clara's face like forgiveness. She turned to Caleb, tears streaming freely now. "It's over," she whispered. He shook his head gently. "It's begun." What justice leaves behind. Red Hollow didn't celebrate the verdict. It went quiet. Shutters closed earlier. Voices lowered. The town that once fed on silence now choked on it. Men avoided one another's eyes. Women held their children closer, as if afraid truth itself might come knocking. Harlan Crow was gone, taken in chains to a place where his name meant nothing. Sheriff Briggs followed a week later. But consequences didn't stop at prison walls. Caleb Kane became a name again. Some said it with respect, others with resentment, a few with fear. "You could stay," Clara told him one evening as they packed to leave Dry Creek. "People here would welcome you." Caleb shook his head. "I don't belong where justice needs guarding." She understood that too. They returned to the valley. The abandoned homestead didn't feel abandoned anymore. Caleb rebuilt the fence. Clara planted a small garden. Slow work. Honest work. The kind that healed without demanding anything back. Some nights were still hard. Clara woke shaking, breath caught in places memory hadn't released yet. On those nights, Caleb lit the lamp and sat nearby, grounding her in the present without asking her to explain the past. "You don't owe me strength," he told her once. "Just honesty." Spring came gently. One morning, Clara stood watching the sunrise spill gold across the land. "I used to think survival was enough," she said. Caleb joined her. "And now I want more." He met her eyes, searching. "What kind of more?" She reached for his hand, the same way she had that first night by the fire, but steadier now. "A life where I choose." He smiled then. "Not the guarded one, the real one." "You already are," he said. Months later, a letter arrived. The federal court reopened Mary Kane's case. Her name was cleared. Caleb stood very still as he read it. Clara took the paper gently and folded it. "She'd be proud of you." He swallowed. "She'd be proud of you." That night, beneath a sky full of stars, Caleb built a fire outside the cabin. "I never planned to stay anywhere," he said. "Never thought I'd want roots." Clara stepped closer. "You don't have to promise forever." He took her face in his hands, slow, careful, asking without words. "I want to," he said. She nodded. Their kiss wasn't rushed. It wasn't desperate. It was earned. And far away, Red Hollow faded into nothing more than a place that once failed them. Sometimes, the bravest thing a woman can do is speak. And the bravest thing a man can do is listen. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to subscribe. Because voices like hers deserve to be heard.